The life of Samuel Ajayi Crowther, 1809, one of the most inspiring and dramatic stories in African history. His journey took him from a captured slave boy in Yoruba land to an internationally respected bishop, scholar, and translator whose work shaped Christianity, education, and language development in West Africa. His story is a powerful example of resilience, faith, intelligence, and leadership. Osogun Oyo Empire. Samuel Ajayi was born around 1809 in Osogun, a small Yoruba town near present-day Oyo State in Nigeria. At the time, the powerful Oyo Empire was one of the most influential political powers in West Africa. He was born into a traditional Yoruba family and grew up surrounded by Yoruba customs, religion, language, and community life. His childhood would have involved learning family traditions, participating in community life, farming, and household duties, listening to elders tell stories of Yoruba history. Nothing suggested that this young boy would one day become one of the most influential Africans of the 19th century. But the region soon became unstable. Wars between kingdoms and slave raiding became common, and many communities were destroyed. Transatlantic slave trade around 1921, when Ajayi was about 12 years old, tragedy struck. Slave raiders attacked his village. Historical accounts say the attackers were linked to regional conflicts and slave trading networks that fed the brutal transatlantic slave trade. The village was burned, looted, destroyed, many people were killed, and others around young Ajayi were captured. He was forced to walk long distances with other prisoners, often tied together. During this journey, families were separated, prisoners were beaten, many died from exhaustion. Ajayi himself was reportedly sold several times between traders before reaching the coast. Eventually, he was forced onto a slave ship headed across the Atlantic. For most Africans in this situation, the future meant permanent slavery in the Americas. But fate intervened. In 1822, the slave ship carrying Ajayi was intercepted by the British Royal Navy. Britain had recently outlawed the slave trade and had begun sending naval patrols to stop slave ships along the African coast. The Navy captured the ship and freed the enslaved Africans on board. Instead of being transported to plantations, the freed captives were taken to Freetown in Sierra Leone, a settlement established for liberated Africans. This moment saved Ajayi's life. Without this intervention, he likely would have lived and died in slavery overseas. In Freetown, Ajayi began a completely new life. The town was unique because it contained Africans from many different ethnic groups who had been rescued from slave ships. Missionaries from the Church Missionary Society took responsibility for educating many of the rescued children. Ajayi was placed in a missionary school where he began learning, reading, writing English Christianity. He proved to be an exceptionally gifted student. In 1825, he was baptized into the Christian faith. At his baptism, he received the name Samuel Crowther. The surname came from a British missionary who supported his education. Crowther quickly became known for his remarkable intelligence and discipline. He studied languages and theology and later attended Fort Abbey College, which became one of the most important centers of higher education in West Africa. There he studied subjects such as theology, linguistics, classical languages. Crowther mastered several languages, including Yoruba, his native language, English, Latin, Greek. His language skills would later become one of his greatest contributions to African scholarship. During his time in Sierra Leone, Crowther married Susan Crowther, who was also a liberated African. Together, they built a strong Christian family. Their household became known for education, discipline, Christian values. Some of their children later became important figures in West African society. After completing his education, Crowther began working as a missionary and teacher with the Church Missionary Society. He traveled extensively throughout West Africa. His missionary journeys included work in present-day Nigeria, the Niger River region, Sierra Leone, and surrounding areas. Because he understood African cultures and languages, he could communicate with local communities far more effectively than many European missionaries. He was respected by both Africans and Europeans. Crowther participated in important exploration and missionary journeys along the Niger River. These expeditions aimed to spread Christianity, establish trade routes, promote education, combat the slave trade. Crowther served as a translator, negotiator, and cultural mediator. His ability to communicate with local leaders made him extremely valuable. One of Crowther's most important achievements was his work on the Yoruba language. Before this time, Yoruba existed mainly as a spoken language. Crowther helped develop a written system for Yoruba. He produced the first Yoruba grammar book, the first Yoruba dictionary translations of Christian text. His greatest work was translating the Bible into Yoruba. This achievement had enormous impact. For the first time, Yoruba people could read religious text in their own language. Yoruba literacy expanded, the language gained written preservation. Crowther is often called the father of written Yoruba. In 1864, Samuel Ajayi Crowther made history. He was consecrated as the first African bishop in the Anglican Church. This was a groundbreaking moment in church history. He became Bishop of the Niger Territory, responsible for leading Christian missions across large parts of West Africa. His work included establishing churches, training African clergy, expanding schools, translating religious materials. For a man who had once been a slave child, this was an extraordinary achievement. Crowther became widely respected by African kings and chiefs, Eurasian missionaries, canonistrators. Many traditional rulers treated him with the respect given to royal advisors or elders. He was known for wisdom, diplomacy, strong leadership. Through education and missionary work, he helped influence the development of modern Nigerian society. Later in his career, Crowther faced serious challenges. Some European missionaries began to doubt the ability of Africans to lead church institutions. Despite his achievements, Crowther faced racial prejudice and criticism. Eventually, some of his authority was undermined by foreign church leaders. These events deeply hurt him, but he continued his work faithfully. Samuel Ajayi Crowther died on 31 December 1891 in Lagos. He was about 82 years old. By the time of his death, he had traveled across much of West Africa, translated major religious texts, helped develop written Yoruba, trained many African church leaders. Today, Samuel Ajayi Crowther is remembered as one of the greatest African pioneers of the 19th century. His legacy includes language development. He helped transform Yoruba into a written language used in education and literature. Christianity in Africa. He helped establish African leadership in the church. Education. He promoted schools and learning throughout West Africa. Symbol of African achievement. His life shows that someone born into extreme hardship can rise to greatness. The life of Samuel Ajayi Crowther is a story of incredible transformation. Captured child, enslaved prisoner, rescued boy, educated scholar, missionary, bishop, historical icon. His journey from slavery to leadership remains one of the most powerful stories of resilience in African history. Even today, more than a century after his death, his influence can still be seen in Nigerian Christianity, Yoruba literature, West African education. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. In the earlier part of the story, we saw how Samuel Ajayi Crowther rose from a captured slave boy to become the first African Anglican bishop. But the full story of his life includes even more dramatic journeys, achievements, and painful struggles. After becoming a respected missionary, Crowther was given an enormous responsibility, helping lead the Niger mission, one of the most ambitious Christian missions in Africa. The mission aimed to spread Christianity in the Niger region, promote legitimate trade instead of slavery, build schools and churches, train African leaders. Crowther traveled extensively along the Niger River, visiting communities and negotiating with local rulers. His knowledge of African culture helped open doors that European missionaries could not easily access. Many chiefs trusted him because he spoke African languages, he understood local customs, he respected traditional authorities. This made him a bridge between African societies and European missionaries. Crowther helped establish Christian communities in several important towns. Among the places influenced by his work were Onitsha, Lokoja, Bonny. These areas later became major centers of Christianity and education in Nigeria. Crowther emphasized something very important: Africans must lead the church in Africa. So he trained African teachers, pastors, and translators, believing that local leadership was the key to success. Crowther's linguistic achievements were revolutionary. Before his work, many African languages were not written systematically. Crowther created tools that allowed Yoruba to be studied academically. His works included Yoruba grammar books, Yoruba dictionaries, translations of Christian hymns, translations of scriptures. His greatest achievement was completing the Yoruba translation of the Bible in 1884. This was a historic moment. For the first time, Yoruba-speaking Christians could read the entire Bible in their own language. This helped spread literacy, preserve Yoruba culture, encourage African scholarship. Crowther became internationally respected. He traveled to England several times, where he met church leaders. Many people in Britain admired him as a symbol of African intellectual ability and leadership. His consecration as bishop took place in Canterbury, a historic center of the Anglican Church. For many Africans, this moment represented a breakthrough in global recognition. Despite his achievements, Crowther's later years became very difficult. Some European missionaries began arguing that Africans should not lead church missions. Nell believed that African clergy were not capable of managing large missions. These views were deeply influenced by racial prejudice. Crowther and the African clergy he trained began facing investigations, accusations of poor leadership attempts to remove African authority. Some missionaries from Europe even tried to replace African pastors with Europeans. This was devastating for Crowther. Eventually, many African leaders in the Niger mission were removed from their positions. Crowther's leadership was slowly undermined. Although he remained bishop in title, much of his authority was taken away. This was one of the most painful chapters in his life. Historians later described it as a serious injustice against the pioneer African leader. Despite these challenges, Crowther remained committed to his faith and work. He continued teaching, translating, supporting African clergy. Even though some European missionaries criticized him, many African communities continued to respect and honor him. He had become a father figure to many. His death marked the end of an extraordinary life. He had lived through capture and slavery, rescue and freedom, education and scholarship, missionary leadership, historic achievements, personal humiliation and struggle. Yet through all of this, he remained a symbol of perseverance and faith. Many institutions today honor Crowther's legacy. These include Ajayi Crowther University in Oyo schools and churches across Nigeria streets and institutions named in his memory. His story is taught in Nigerian history, African church history, linguistic studies. The life of Samuel Ajayi Crowther is not just a story about religion. It is a story about survival, education, leadership, cultural pride, African dignity. From the horrors of slavery to international respect, Crowther's life remains one of the most powerful African success stories ever recorded.